It's a lot of math I've taken. I've taken all the math you can take that is applied mathematics. And this is from a person who failed all of those math classes in high school. The difference, I learned how to learn. Boxing gave me the confidence in myself to do that. It gave me a method, even though it seems completely different. This is what you got to do.
You are now tuning in to the Relentless Project. Real people, real stories, real life.
Well, bro, I appreciate you for coming on and jumping on the Relentless Project.
Not a problem, man. I appreciate you having me. Just always happy that somebody wants to hear me talk.
Yeah, you're kind of like a local legend. For those of you who don't know, this is Ed Latimore, boxing phenom, I'd say, which you're probably not going to agree with.
I'm just a guy that, I don't know. I would never. I think I have a pretty accurate self-assessment, but then again, maybe I'm being, not too. Maybe I'm being too humble. I don't know.
Yeah, humble is the word that has been used to describe you. So I would definitely say he's like, who's talking about me? But you finished your professional career 13-1. Am I
13-1-1?
You're an author. You have a new book coming out, Hard Lessons from the Hurt Business, Boxing and the Art of Life. What is that? What is that about? If you can give us a little.
So the book is a memoir, actually, and funny story is as I'm writing the book, I don't know I'm writing a memoir. I know what my agent sold them, but I don't really realize that what we're writing is my story. Now there's a narrative arc we want to construct the story with, so people follow along and they're interested, and you don't go off, because there are tons of things you could write about in your life, but you want to keep it in line with the kind of point that you're making in the book and what you want to communicate. So what the point of the book is to show that there's a hard life that many fighters have that leads them to fighting. It's not that, not all people in boxing have a hard life or have a rough background, but many of us do, if for no other reason. Then there's a certain psychological resilience that you develop. And resilience might not even be the best adjective, but we'll work with that for now. There's a certain psychological resilience that you develop when you have to go through hardship, especially hardship from an early age. I would even say that if we want to consider it kind of like a baseline where a person, most people are used to dealing with this level of difficulty, and anything above that pushes them or stresses them out. Then a person who comes into the world and they're dealing with a lot of stress, their level's already up here, and then this pushes them a little more. Now, not the healthiest thing, and we can get into that, but that type of mentality tends to do well in a sport where you're forced to face, one of the things that humans are designed to avoid at all costs, the avoid pain. In fact, we'll put in way more energy to avoid pain than to seek pleasure. Like if those are the options, talk to a cute girl or avoid getting a bullet. Like we're gonna, or even avoid an ass kicking. Like, every time you're gonna avoid the ass kicking, and that's just for that that example kind of works for what I'm talking about. But it's in general how our brains work and how we've evolved. We know this from a study of psychological biases, in particular loss aversion bias, where you experience pain more intensely than you experience the equal gain, or you experience loss more intensely than you would experience an equal gain. Losing $5 hurts a lot more than winning $5. So all of that to say, the hard lessons from the Hurt Business, Boxing and the Art of Life, it is about my life and how it led me into boxing. And then ultimately how boxing helped me deal with the problems that got me into boxing.
And it's not out yet, but I kind of read a little bit of the overview, and I think it boils down to like a metaphor of life, like you said, right? Like fighting is the ultimate, like people try to avoid fighting and confrontation and things that can quote unquote kill you, right? But let's boil that down to people who aren't fighters. We will sit on the couch and devour Netflix and, joy stuff or TikTok, but getting up to do the chores or getting up to do something extra is hard.
Yeah.
So we'll do everything to avoid, like, for example, I have a little issue with an internal door in my house, right? So like I can't get to my basement from inside the house. So I'm with the knob. I'm working on it. It requires me to go outside, go through the outside door, right? So my laundry sat in my dryer for 2 days because for me, it was harder to just go out there and get it done than to sit and work on something, which I'd rather do. But in my mind, it was, man, I gotta get that done. I gotta get that done. I gotta get that done. But I did everything, stayed busy to avoid that, than just going down there and getting it done. So it's like, it's crazy that,
humans, and this is all creatures in the universe. This is everything. This is a universal law that organisms seek the most energy efficient configuration. Now that's how I learned to say it in physics. The kind of colloquial way we'll express that same idea is that all things take the path of least resistance. I like to say the most energy efficient configuration because what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to maximize our happiness or our enjoyment and minimize our suffering, right? But we're going to definitely minimize that suffering. So, good example is when you look at people who are not fit. Well, fitness is a high energy expenditure activity in the weirdest way possible, even though it lowers your basal caloric requirement. But it takes a lot of discipline and control to go, okay, not going to touch that and going to go work out. Okay, can we do this? No. And what's the payoff? Is it really going to improve my life that much more? Maybe, maybe not. But I know this. I'm not dead now and I'm not in pain now. So why should I do it? And if you look at everything a person does in their life, what they're trying to do is avoid this expenditure of energy that is beyond requirement. Most people are just existing there, just floating along and fighting to draw this and make it related. And fighting is voluntary fighting. Now, if somebody's gonna come up on you, they're about to put belt to ass, and you didn't and you didn't sign up for that one, that's a different kind of problem. Now we're dealing with fight or flight. But the idea of voluntarily fighting, of stepping into the ring or the cage or even on the mat, I put grappling in its own little category, but it still earns its stripes as a combat entity, a combat sport. Doing any of these things requires so much energy and it requires so much mental and emotional exertion, and it's got a very powerful negative feedback mechanism to make sure that when you make mistakes, you're probably not going to make that same mistake twice. And if you make it 3 times, well, you're not going to survive long enough to make it the 4th kind of deal. So all of this comes together and you've got this thing that costs so much energy that no one wants to do it. It costs so much. But for the people that do it, I find, not just in my life and experience, but my life is what the book is about. I find that a person who puts themselves through the process of training, they come out a very different person. They come out an improved person, and they come out improved specifically in that they're no longer victims of inertia. They're no longer victims of inertia, and they resist entropy. They are making things happen in the world rather than letting the world happen to them, because that's the only way that you will be able to even survive the training of a combat sport. You'll have to go and you'll have to every day you'll need to pull the highest levels of focus so you don't get cracked not paying attention. You're going to have to manage emotions, because what you learn quickly is that anger has no place in the ring. You can be fired up, you can be frustrated, but even those you have to control and direct. But you can't be a hothead. You won't last. You have to be physically fit. You cannot be even just kind of in shape. You got to be in the best shape you think you can be in, and still know that you can go beyond that because of what you've done for yourself mentally, or really we'll call that your willpower, your ability to resist what you feel. All of this is so much more than just existing. So I tell guys all the time, the best self-improvement panacea you can put on yourself is to go train for fights. Do it for a year. You don't have to even, you should take a fight. That's kind of the point of training for a fight, but do it for a year. Take 1 or 2 amateur fights. See what happens. You come out a different man.
Absolutely. What is one of the goals you have as you were finishing this book? Like, where do you see this book going, and what type of person do you want to pay attention to this book specifically?
So like, the marketer in me, the capitalist in me says everyone should read this book, right? No, but the creative in me, one of the things I was told, a very great piece of advice, was when you write a book, you should write for one person. And if you get through to that person super clear, you've achieved your goal. Now, that's hard for a lot of we'll call them content creators to accept, because that means, by definition, you are ignoring everyone else who could be a potential customer. All it is to say, the person who needs to read my book, I wrote the book as if I were trying to inspire my youngest self to continue along when things are difficult. Now, obviously, we got to the point where the book can be written and people care, and we're talking and giving interviews and telling people about it. So I don't need to hear those words. But if there's an alternative universe where I exist, but for whatever reason my motivation is lacking, I would want me to read this book and see, oh, this is what's going to be possible. So by extension, if we take that and throw it in the real world, I want people to read my book and realize that their life, or that just because something's difficult, this is what I always say, just because something's difficult, that doesn't matter if it's vital to your success. So if you're going through a hard time, read this book and be like, hey, this guy did that. This is possible. What is this? This is nothing. I can figure this out. I always think young men immediately, because I feel like there is a lot of attention, or rather a lack of attention, being paid to young men today. I don't think there are a lot of suitable role models. I think not only are there not a lot of suitable role models, but here's an interesting piece of information for you. So, in an ideal society, we have parity between the sexes. Men and women have equal opportunity. We can't control outcome, but we can control opportunity. And that's the case, I think, today. I think there is equal opportunity. But we're being told that the world still exists as it did in, we'll say, 1970, which is like right around when the last real piece of restrictive legislation existed for women, which was, I think it was 72, that the last company or the last credit card company no longer required the signature of a husband for his wife to get a credit card. Many had abolished it by then, but that was like the last one. So we saw this parity, or not parity, we saw this lack of parity. We saw this gap when women were behind in like education and income and quality of living, all of these things, right? That was very real. Today, it has shifted in the other direction completely. And first thought is like, oh, the pendulum swings back. Except the gap is bigger in this direction now. The fewer men are graduated from high school. Fewer men are graduating from high school. Fewer men are working. Many men are overweight. That is a huge one. So there's all of these, not just another stat too, the rates of ADHD, men are diagnosed at a much higher rate, or well, boys are diagnosed at a much higher rate. And in general, those rates have risen over time, but it really outpaces in boys versus girls. And why is this? Who knows? The way I look at it is that based on the way some of the things have changed in school, mainly how recess has been removed in many, though not all, schools, and what's expected of a young child in a classroom, and how that expectation has gotten stricter, and how boys are way more susceptible to screen time for lots of reasons, mainly the type of interactions that go on. Girls tend to get hooked on like the social aspect of things, but boys, the video games and the porn, okay? So all of these things are drawing boys behind. I would like to think that my book will go, oh, okay, yeah, this is a rough time and I want to be more, I can go do more. I can be some role model for some of these guys coming up that don't have the opportunities or feel like that no one's paying attention to them.
That's an interesting point because one of the things that kind of helped me launch or forced me to launch this podcast was I'm trying to listen to people like you and have these conversations and learn, right? Because the more I talk to people, the more I learn, the better I am forming relationships. And that's one thing I lacked as a kid, right? Because I knew it all, did it all. Nobody can tell me any better. So one thing that kind of formed me as a man was something I always tell myself is like, be the person I needed growing up.
Yeah.
That's how I try to move, right? So like decisions I make, relationships I form, positions I put myself in. Like, is this going to help that child that just needed a father, that needed, good guidance, right? Because I surrounded myself with, I grew up humble beginnings, right? So who are the father figures?
Yeah.
For me, it was the person providing food for me. And that was the work I was doing. And the work I was doing was not good work, quote unquote. You know what I do for a living, so I got to keep that at a minimum. But I was very distracted, and then the older I got, the more mature I got, the more I realized it's important to surround yourself with a good community, good people, and do good things. And in that moment, I didn't realize life is going to be better. For me, it was the bubble I was living in. Like, this is life. And I managed to break out of that and get into college. I'm like, oh man, like life is a little bit bigger. Then I met cool people, opened up good experiences. Then I'm like, there's so much to life that I've never thought was even possible. And then now where I'm at, I'm like, dude, if that little kid could have known
right
the outcome, like it's going to be okay, my whole life would be different. And I own everything I've ever done because it's gotten me to the point I am today. But like, if I meet another child or another kid, that was me right now. Like I could probably steer them to avoid a lot of the things that I should have avoided. So that's interesting that you paint that, like you're writing this book to the younger you, because there's a lot of men who are probably living this life that you lived.
Very much so. One of the things you said that jumped out to me is, you see the world as bigger. I remember when I was younger, I remember that I didn't know anyone who didn't live like me for a long time. So I grew up in Northview Heights, in the projects. All the people I knew, nobody's dad was around, single mom. A lot of people relying on the system to survive. I mean, by definition, if you live in public housing, you rely on the system to survive. So that was all I knew. And then I went to Allegheny Middle School. Back when it was Allegheny Middle School. I don't know quite what it is now. I know that like right after I left, they had switched buildings. But I bring up the distinction clearly because the school I went to was the feeder school for a few other neighborhoods on the north side. None of them like great places. This was feeder school for a lot of Manchester back when Manchester was like not gentrified. And the Mexican War Streets back when it was not gentrified to really earn the name, the Mexican War Streets.
Yeah, now it's like a cultural,
it's a
nice,
really nice area. Federal Street, wow. I didn't even recognize Federal Street the last time I went down it. But because like we used to walk from Allegheny over to the corner of North and Federal, and I don't know if you remember this. How old are you?
I'm 32, but I grew up in Erie. I moved down here like 7 years ago.
Okay, so you wouldn't even. There used to be a porn theater like back right there. And the Garden is what it was called. It's not there anymore. It was the Garden, and we go in the corner store and get some cookies right there. That whole area was a mess. But I grew up over there, and then there were a lot of people who also came from Troy Hill, but it was the poor blacks from the projects, and it was the poor whites from Troy Hill, Spring Garden, and then there was another project up on there was Fondview, Spring Hill, and then we had some people who were like lower middle class from Perrysville. But all of this converged in my middle school, and so I also didn't know any other world but this, and people like this, and this is all I saw for a little while. Except there was one day of the week I went to this place. They had a gifted center, they called it, where if teachers thought you were smart enough or whatever, you got to go to this school, and you go to this school with other smart people. And one of the things that exposed me to people from all over the city in different places, different walks of life. And I didn't know their family. I still had never really been out to projects, but I got to meet these people. That's one of the things amongst me wanting to get away from my environment that motivated me to go to Shenley High School. And I know you moved here to the city, but I'm gonna paint a picture. Northview Heights is on the edge of the north side of the city. Shenley High School, which is no longer there anymore, I think it's just gone, is in the heart of Oakland. So every day for 4 years, I'm catching the PAT bus from the edge of the city. I mean, it's like the last neighborhood. I think there's one more neighborhood, maybe, Observatory Hill, before you reach the North Hills area where it's not the city. Catching that bus over to Oakland, that's about an hour, 2 bus rides an hour, and then back home every day. It's 2 hours. But it's a completely different environment. I got friends now who both their parents live at home. I didn't even know what that was. I remember when I learned what the word mortgage meant. I'd never heard that word before. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So no one really does own their house when they say they do. Yeah. Right? I'm talking to these kids, and they're like, I was just like, how many fights you guys been in fights? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of deal. But what it does is, or what that experience did for me, it showed me that there's another world. It showed me a bigger world. It showed me a different world. And I think about a lot of the people who don't take advantage of or have not been beneficiaries of what I think is the country in the world with the greatest social mobility, period. Nowhere else in the world can you start at the bottom and end up at the top. Our social mobility is unparalleled. And I think one of the reasons why it doesn't happen for a lot of people is they don't know. They know it's possible, like in theory, to make more money. But it's one thing to know that cars exist and another one to sit in a car, right? If you don't have enough money to buy a car, it's very different. Like that was my life. I see buses, right? I take a bus everywhere. I know cars exist because I see them on the road. I see them every day. Never been in a car. And I get in the car and go, oh, this is what a car feels like. Now I can conceptualize this. I can plan to have one of these things maybe because it feels nice. I think there are a lot of things in life like that where the idea is clear, but people don't know what that really is and what it's like. That's how I felt about 2-parent households. I'm like, I know someone has a mom and a dad. I understand how kids are made.
But you don't know what that experience is like actually being in it.
I'll never forget. I dated this insane woman. Just one of the worst people I'd ever met. And, but just because a broken clock, just because the clock is broken, it still tells the time correct twice a day. But I said that to a freaking Gen Z kid, and he tried to argue with me because he never learned how to read an analog clock.
Even digital,
blew
right?
my mind. Right?
Still right on digital, like.
Yeah. And she said, something? You know why you ain't shit? You ain't never seen a man and a woman in a house in a loving relationship together. And she was right. I mean, I just didn't like her.
Yeah.
But she was right. I had never seen that. And it's one of those things you don't realize how that informs how you interact with women because you don't know, you never seen it. So you got to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, growing up, I never saw a successful marriage.
Oh, right.
So like divorce is normal, but is it? When you talk to other families and they're like on the brink of divorce, people were like ready to end their lives because we cannot get divorced. And in my mind, I'm like, I'll never understand what that's like because I've seen it in my whole life.
Let me tell you something that blew my mind, or it's one of these little realizations being a dad. I never understood the big deal about divorce because I don't have any memories of my dad ever living with me. I never seen them live together. As far as I'm concerned, it's just like breaking up, right? I don't get it. I never understood why kids were so affected by it. As I got older, logically, I could at least walk my way through, okay, this must be a big change, but it's still just your parents. And maybe it's because I got a dysfunctional relationship with my parents. I don't see it. A few months ago, my son started randomly trying to hug us together. My son's 2.5 years old. Because he sees us as a unit. He doesn't understand us not being together. That's all he's known his whole life. And he sees us hug, and he knows we hug him. So if I hug my wife, he comes over. It's like group hug. He says group hug. Like, let's do it together.
That's adorable.
And that really hit me. I was like, this guy doesn't know anything but this.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like when the cat dies, and I gotta explain. He probably ain't gonna care when the cat dies, but when the kid has a bond with the pet,
that's all they know. Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned like mortgage and cars, and I think it's because it's so far fetched for some people, me included. Right? When I just bought my first house like 3-4 years ago, and it was not a big deal until and here's my situation. I was renting it first. They wouldn't want to sell it. So I was renting it. And then after a couple of years, they're like, hey, we're willing to sell it. Right? So nothing changed for me other than I was paying this person and now I'm paying a bank.
Yeah.
Right? But it was something like when I walked into my house for the first time after I signed the mortgage paperwork, I'm like, yo, this is on the road to be mine. Yeah. Like I own this. Growing up, I've never owned, like my family never owned a house. We rented, projects, apartment. Like we moved so much, right? So like moving to me wasn't a big deal. Some people moved like, man, but I grew up here. This is my roots. To me, I'm like, yeah, you make it happen wherever you go. Like you just got to figure it out. So it's like, it's so far-fetched. It was so far-fetched to own a house that it wasn't a big deal for me. And people would talk to me like, dude, you got to buy a house. I'm like, what does it matter? I'm about to move in 2 years anyway. And they're like, no, like, why would you move in 2 years? I'm like, why wouldn't I? You know what I mean? So like, the older I get, the more I start to realize like things aren't far-fetched, right? If I tell you, go out and make $100, you're probably going to think in your mind like, all right, what's the fastest way? What's the best way to make $100? Boom. If I tell you, go out and make $1 billion, like, you're not even going to think about it. You're like, yeah,
like, what is wrong with you? Like, that's how
because it's so far-fetched. But there's people making billions of dollars every day. So that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, I think you said people don't know. Exposing, especially this younger generation who grew up how we grew up, exposing them to life. And we had a center up in Erie called the JFK Center. And that's where we would all, like, underprivileged youth, quote, we'd go, we'd do our homework, we'd play games. And like, I was like, man, this is, but I couldn't really get into it because we couldn't afford the transportation there, you know, and we couldn't get on the list because my mom didn't speak English on getting it funded for transportation. So I would like sneak in, and I got these doses of like, wow, this is like a community. All these kids are friends, they're laughing. And then when we're out, you know, in the projects playing at the park, they all kind of know each other because they go to the center, and I feel like an outsider. You know what I mean? So like, but that program, you know, I don't see a lot of stuff like that here, especially here in Pittsburgh. Maybe I don't know about it. You know, where youth can go in and kind of, because what happens when we're out, you know, it's territory, right? Like this is my side, this is your side. Now, you know, now you force these kids to play together, interact together, and you put them in the real world. It's no longer, it's like, hey, we can be cool and cordial. You know, we just don't give each other the time to establish that connection.
Yeah, it's just a different world, unfortunately.
And you speak a lot about, you know, like trying to give back. Like one of the things I read is Wikipedia bio, which I love. I think they did you good. Those things tend to get it wrong, so here we're going to learn. But you're a huge advocate for mental health, and that's all the stuff that plagues like our youth.
Yeah, you know, and the phrase mental health always bugged me a little, but as I have come to see it as a subset of addiction, or rather see addiction as a subset of mental health, that has changed my perspective on it. Other things that have changed my perspective. Seeing people I know deal with things, and then also looking at how I deal with things and how I've dealt with things. There's this idea that mental illness and mental health are not real problems. And I probably subscribed more to that. I probably subscribed more to that idea than the acceptance of them. And over time, I came to understand that it's like a concussion, okay? If you look at somebody who has a concussion, you're never going to be able to know they have a concussion. If you scan someone's brain under an MRI, very rarely, in fact, if you can't identify a concussion, you can identify that something's wrong. It might be a complication or related to a concussion, or rather the event that caused the concussion. But in terms of like looking at an MRI going, that's a concussion, that's not a concussion, you can't do it. But anyone who's ever fought before or played a contact sport knows concussions is real to the motherfucker, man. That is not imaginary, and it affects your living.
For sure.
Okay? I think about what makes a happy person take their life. Or I won't even say happy person. You show me somebody. Because I can't imagine taking my life.
Yeah, that's something I've always, like, what position you have to be in to make that decision.
But to see somebody do it, and it happens so often, even if an event triggers it, right? We'll just use something crazy to make the point I'm about to make. There ain't no event in the world that's going to turn me into a pedophile. It ain't never going to happen. And no tragic event, nothing crazy like that. But because that's mental sickness. That's a different type of mental sickness, okay? But there ain't no event in the world that's going to make me do that. There's no event in the world, I would think, that will make me kill myself. But clearly there is something that is making some people do it. So even though it ain't my issue and it's not there are people that do have that issue. The difference, we can treat these people and not, feel bad. I probably should have used that as the initial example, but the point I'm going on here is that we can treat people or we can try and help people who do have some condition underlying, because no matter what is going on in their world, they feel like they have to take their life. I don't know what it is, but I know it exists because I know that life is wonderful. And even when life doesn't feel wonderful, I've never been sitting there thinking like, man, you know what? It's time. I'm gonna just check out. Like, it's never been my thought process. Just like it's never been my thought process to do anything crazy. Like, this just a funny story, man. The guys would tell me when I lived out in LA for a little bit. LA is a crazy, weird place. I'm not a fan of Los Angeles. It's just not for me. But I had some guy try and explain to me that he wasn't gay. He just needed some money. And so there's a big scene out there for that, the gay for pay scene. And I said to myself, I mean, I was, listening to being open-minded, whatever. But I thought about it. I was like, I've been broke as hell before. I've never thought about doing that. Like my brain just never went there. I've thought about robbing somebody, and I'm not.
It's easy.
But I've never thought, you know what? That's how I'm gonna pay the rent this month. Never happens. It's just not in me. But that doesn't mean it's not in other people.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
So
how do we summarize that?
How do we summarize it? We summarize it that some people need help.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And men, look, the suicide rate for men is incredibly. It's depending on the source, but the range is somewhere here 5 to 9 times higher for men than women, because men do not talk about these things. Women are much better at talking amongst themselves about their problems, and that's part of it. The other part is that men feel like no one's going to listen, or they got to be tough and tough enough. Everybody's got a breaking point. Writing my book really helped me understand that I have a breaking point, because I thought about, like, sitting there holding my kid's like 6, 7 months old, doing what babies do, which is keeping you awake and not giving a shit that you're tired or whatever. And I'm like, this is miserable. But I'm also looking at him going, this is great. Like you're here, you're alive. I can't wait till this phase is over. And there ain't a single night I've ever thought, it'd be great back when he was 7 months old and not sleeping and we were waking up 4 times. Like, I ain't never thought that. But this was a great experience. And I wouldn't want to do it any other way, because this is my son. This is my baby. I could not imagine leaving him. It made me think about my dad, because part of the book I write about my experiences with, or rather not with my father, because he wasn't around. But I knew who he was. He didn't just straight skip. He moved all the way across the state to Philadelphia. And that's where he lived. And it's not like he was making a bunch of money or something like that. That's just what he did. I get parents separating. I don't understand how a man could move to another city and leave his child behind. And for most of my life, I had not thought about my dad. My dad died when I was 18. I never had any real feelings, either way, positive or negative. But it was at that moment I started to feel a low-level anger, and I was angry at everything again. I had went through this phase once where I was angry at my mom and my dad for so many things, just irresponsibility. It's this type of thing that, like, it's made me harsh on other parents, because I go, we don't ask to be here. No one asked to be here. We remember that. So we come in by their will. So if they all fucked up when they bring us in here, we're going to have to deal with that. We're going to have to pay the price for it long after they pass. I said this to my mom all the time about my sister. I said, how you're treating her now, you're not going to be here. And when you're gone, she's going to have to figure it out. And she might not be able to figure it out because you never gave her a chance to figure it out. We used to argue about this all the time, and she never got it. But that's how I felt then. I had to deal with the anger, and I think I did a pretty good job at dealing with it, but it took a little time. It took talking to some people too. I just happen to have a friend who's a therapist. That's all. And it was just enough talk. I didn't go all out sessions because I don't believe in like just using somebody for their services or whatever. But that's the type of thing I'm talking about. I'm not an angry guy, but I was angry about that, and it was not going away. I'd think about it. When my mom died, and I would see my sister suffer, I got angry about that. Difference is I felt fine talking to my wife about that. That was easy because she'd seen a lot with my mom and understood where I was coming from and close to my sister. But that's the thing. I got people to talk to. A lot of guys don't have, like you were talking about the relationships earlier. A lot of guys don't have people to talk to. There is a very real thing that we go through. And if we don't have the connections, if we don't feel comfortable reaching out to each other because society stigmatized male connection or male bonding, or you haven't put the energy in to make bonds with your friends, you might do some crazy stuff that you didn't think you were capable of. Or stuff that you knew you were capable of, but everything in your life, even you didn't know it, but everything was set up to be all good. And even if you don't do something as crazy as take yourself out, you might go drink yourself into oblivion and get behind the wheel of a car, right? A lot of self-destructive behavior people can do. It ain't always the way it doesn't always look like somebody taking a bunch of pills and trying to take the long nap, right? It looks a lot of different ways.
Food, bad food. That's one. We talking about addiction. We talk about alcoholism, drug addiction, porn addiction, food. I've seen people change within a couple months where I'm like, hey, are you good? Yeah, why? And like you notice their attitude change and stuff, but like their physiological makeup has changed. And it's like we can write that off because food's not quote unquote dangerous in and of itself. If I eat one Oreo or one bag of chips right now, that's not going to kill me. But if I overindulge in that, that's what it's a slow death. You're leading yourself to a slow death. And that's something that we ignore. And the food is as addicting as anything. It can be as addicting as anything else.
Anything. You can, man, humans are incredible. You can make anything. You can pretty much make anything addictive. Yeah. You know what blows my mind? That people get addicted to gambling.
Losing money.
Right. Like, I can tell you the last time I bet on something with some money because it makes me so nervous. I bet on this was back in 2011. I bet on the NFC Championship game between the 49ers and the Giants. That same game that...
Was that Eli Manning's throw?
It wasn't that game, but
okay.
it was the game before it that got them to that game against the Patriots. I bet on that game because the guys were, we were just sitting around shooting shit. I bet $20, and I can still feel the heart palpitations when I think about it. Couldn't imagine getting hooked on gambling, right? But there are people out there who be like, hooked on alcohol? What's wrong with you? This is great.
I use it for fun. You're actually like, it's at your will,
There's the great meme where it's like how people in rehab, how people in alcohol rehab look at narcotics rehab, and then the same thing, vice versa. And it's that whole snooty character thing from that Twilight movie where the vampires look down. Yeah. But that's how it is. Everyone looks down on everyone else's vice, and we look anybody. You find that trigger and the right circumstances, man, you get hooked on anything. But the other thing that the opposite of this continues to amaze me, and we've got like research on it now. I got a buddy who said to me one time, he said, "You know what, man? I smoked crack like 3 times, and it's just not for me." Now, growing up, I can never hear somebody. There's no smoking crack 3 times. This once you're done. Like that's like the whole how it spread. But we know that this is so fascinating that one of the biggest predictors, if not the biggest predictor of your propensity towards addiction, is the quality of the social connections in your life. This is why, when I got sober, when I was trying to get sober, I should say, I made the major mistake of asking my drinking friends or telling my drinking friends that I planned to go to AA because I thought I had a problem. And they're like, what do you mean you have a problem? We're just sitting around drinking like this is what we do in our 20s. We drink, we party. Not realizing, I didn't notice at the time, I'm talking to people who have, they grew up in 2-parent households. They see their family all the time. There's not a bunch of trauma. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here drinking to forget shit. They're just drinking to enjoy it. It's a very different relationship with alcohol. And it's all based, or it all starts with the relationships. We got 2 great experiments, one completely natural, one in the laboratory. The one in the laboratory is with Rat Park. In a rat park, they got 2 rat cages. The one rat cage is super small, ain't no toys, it's just one rat in there, it's cramped, and the water's, he's got the options for morphine water and the regular water. The motherfucker's got hooked on morphine every time. That regular water, not interested. Meanwhile, there's Rat Park. It's this big-ass rat cage. All this space, all these toys, all these other friendly rats. Unlimited food, unlimited toys. It's a great time. It's clean. Same thing, morphine water, regular water. The rats don't give a shit about the morphine water. Some of them will sip it occasionally, but they're like, now I want this regular water. Life's good. I don't need this mind-altering substance. And you take that and you compare it to this other great natural experiment. When the GIs came back from Vietnam, a lot of them were hooked on heroin. Heroin was big over there. It was super cheap and it was plentiful. That's what American Gangster's about. That's where he was getting heroin from over in Vietnam right after the war. And he was bringing it back in the caskets of war heroes. But they didn't stay hooked. Not the way they thought they would. The VA and everyone tracking this stuff. Because they were out of that trauma environment and back around their family. And that overrode. And heroin's addictive. Like the opioids, they're like real addictive.
They're tough, yeah.
But that overrode it. And so when I think about those 2 studies, I just think about, that's what's going to make whatever fills that gap, wherever you're social, because everyone's got, not everyone, if you have that crack in your psyche where you don't feel connected and like people care about you and you got people to talk to, someone will find you.
It's like an escape, right? Like that rat in that little cage has nowhere to go. Those soldiers overseas have nowhere to go. So this is their illicit escape. When you don't have to escape illicitly, and you can, they say people who travel, people who explore, people who form good relations, like they tend to do that less because you don't need to escape from much.
It's like, man, I never had this realization. That's why these conversations are great. But I'm gonna, when I tell this story, I'm gonna make this point from now on. I used to work with guys who were hooked on porn. You know what I don't know if this is my experience. This is not research based. Single biggest commonality for me that I saw, guys that couldn't get laid. And that sounds really obvious, right? That sounds obvious. It wasn't always the case. But it was the case enough to where it was a pretty strong predictor. So what do you do if you can't get the real thing? You take something artificial, the digital screen. Just like if you can't get the real bonds, if you can't get the real enjoyment, what are drugs, right? I'll phrase drugs another way. We know what drugs are chemically, but what if I just said, hey, drugs are like the happy pill. You don't have to do no work to be happy. You just take this happy pill. You don't have to risk rejection. You don't have to go do anything hard. You don't have to worry about exhausting yourself or earning your dopamine, as they say. Just take this pill and you're going to be good. Just shoot this up, you'll be good. It's not as good as the real thing. The same way an actual woman is not as good, or it's the same thing as a same thing
typo,
as a,
folks.
Yeah, same thing as a digital porn screen is not as good as the real relationship and the real woman.
Yeah, it's taking a shortcut to happiness. And, growing up, I saw a lot of people take that shortcut, some who aren't here anymore. And, like, sitting back, I can be like, man, I can understand because I was around that. But, like, being out of it, I can't. It's hard to understand because if you just did a little bit of work. And I know it sounds so layman's and, like, it's not as simple as I'm saying it. But when we dumb everything down, you can win a lot of these fights, right? Like,
You're
it
right.
just requires work. In that moment, you don't see that finish line, so that's why those decisions are made for like, oh, let me just happy pill, because we don't see the finish line. But when the finish line is in sight, it's easier to overcome, right? And I guess it's showing people the finish line.
And check it out, man. Wow, you really got my whole brain just fired up right here. Because, let's look at it like a hierarchy, kind of a step up. So we're going to take this artificial happiness, this artificial sex, and place it a real one. We'll take the next level up. You ever see guys, I know a lot of guys, not anymore. Now I'm 40. Wow, when did that happen?
I just want to take a second to shout out a few companies who've believed in me. These were one of our first official sponsors, so huge shout out. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Carbo Jewelers, established in 1997 on the values of honesty and integrity. Whether you're searching for the perfect piece, need expert repair services, visit Carbo Jewelers in Newark's Ironbound District, where your jewelry is always in safe hands. This episode is also brought to you by Continental Jewelers, proudly serving Hudson County, New Jersey since 1964. Whether you're seeking a timeless piece or need expert repairs, they've got you covered. Visit Continental Jewelers, your trusted source for all things jewelry. You can find them on Instagram at Carbo Jewelers or online at carbojewelers.com. Lastly, big shout out to Carbo Trading. Besides coins, precious metals, and jewelry, if it could be traded and collected, he's probably got it. They can be found on Instagram at carbo.trading. You can find all of our sponsors out online on our sponsor page at therelentlessproject.com.
40.
I know
man,
a
you
lot
look
of
30.
guys. Oh, man, 4 decades on this planet. But we'll meet a lot of guys who their biggest accomplishment in their 30s. I get hoes, right? Because if you got this whole, you got it, you're missing the bond, you're missing the acceptance, you're missing the love in your life. You never got it. Whatever.
Yeah, no, it's true.
You get consumed chasing that because that's a pretty big component to happiness. I think is the love and acceptance, and you go find it that way, but you're not doing anything else. Working hard, what's that? Because this is still kind of working hard because, now there's there are other things that go into it, like the cultural milieu you're in, and if guys value that, I grew up in that milieu, where like the insult was, I get more bitches than you, like kind of, I'm like, all right, bro.
And it's crazy because I grew up in that too, and like now the flex is like I got a loyal wife who will die and kill for me, and it's like talk about a flex. I got kids who look up to me.
Right.
Like I see that and I'm like, yo, that's a man. Dude, that's a man. Like, dude, he's got a powerful woman who stands beside him, powerful family. But back in the day, that was the whole thing. And it's like, what are we missing?
And I used to think that was all young men. It's
young-minded.
Yeah, young-minded.
Because I still see grown men doing that.
Still see grown men doing it because if that's all but like it's so weird. Well, it's not weird,
No, I understand because we're all looking, and for the majority, we're looking for love.
Yeah.
We're looking for that bond, right? But we'll do the work, and as soon as we start feeling like, oh man, it's scary, because it's a scary thing, because now I owe you something. You got I took, now I have to give. I don't want to do that. Next. Like,
it's the hardest part of a relationship.
It's giving.
When you accept that, like, I'll never forget when I realized what I was doing wasn't working. That meant I had to admit to myself that I wanted more than just to be in these streets, as they say today. So I had to admit, I said, this is, it ain't gonna work this way. I'm gonna have to do it a different way. That meant being somebody, I'll never forget when I made the realization, I stopped seeing this girl. I said, this is not gonna work because I'm not happy with you. You're just taking up my time. Now, I didn't say it like that, right?
Yeah, he verbal judoed it.
But I more or less said that. And because I said that, I wasn't out with her that night. And I met a girl I ended up in a pretty solid relationship with for a while until we just went our separate ways. Like there's no, and like quite literally, like two different parts of the country. I'm going to LA, she's going to Germany. It is what it is. And then the next one I ended up dating is the wife now. So once you dial it in and kind of figure out what you want, what you're willing to do, what you want, and then realizing what it costs, and then you go, okay, I'm going to pay that because what I want, the value of it exceeds the cost I have to pay, then you end up in a pretty good position. And I think that's like the secret of life, figuring out things where the value exceeds the cost you got to pay. Because you get yourself into a lot of trouble when it's quite literally not worth it, but you expend energy and time on it.
That's a really good way to put, like a simple way for a complicated thing. Is this value worth the cost I'm willing to put in?
Your
And I guess it could go both ways, right? Because if you don't see much value in yourself, your cost is going to be a lot lower.
Let me tell you something. One of the biggest things that helped me get sober finally, I realized that I did not think highly of myself. And I didn't realize that because you don't sit, you don't reflect. One day you wake up and you're like, really don't like me. No one else likes me. What am I doing here? Maybe I jump off a bridge kind of deal. But I realized I didn't think highly of myself. And I didn't realize that until I had put enough things around in my life and then risked them again with alcohol to go, whoa, what are we doing here? Are we going to behave like we don't? Because I hadn't, in my mind, that was not something I accepted yet. So my behavior didn't match kind of this idea of myself I had. But then when I looked at my behavior and then all of my behavior leading up to that point, I said, wow, man, you really don't give a shit. Like, you might say that, but look at how you live in. And then I was like having a conversation with myself. I was like, yeah, man, you're right, dog. You're right. What are we going to do about this? And it helped me get sober. But at that point, before that point, I was taking actions where what I got out of those actions cost so much more. like a very simple equation. Drinking a lot to the point where you don't remember what's going on, and then that's already a low value activity. Then you combine it, or you add to that, I should say, getting behind the wheel. Now you've taken it from low value to negative value. You are going to cost someone else or cost yourself significant time, energy, life. It's low value. But once I went like, okay. But like, look at boxing, for example, or writing a book, which is an event in and of itself. There's a thing that it's going to cost a lot of energy. The training for the last fight, training costs. Writing this book, it costs. Building this podcast studio, it costs. But the value you generate and what you get in return, that's going to be worth so much more. So much more.
Bro, this conversation alone, I got all my value and everything I've ever done in the studio. I swear. I have a lot of good conversations, but this is like a lot of self-reflection that needs to be involved, especially for people listening. How are you approaching relationships in life? Like, are you putting up, are you looking at its value, right? Because we have value and then perceived value, right? Like a meaningful relationship, high value.
Right.
How we look at it, some people may look at that and be like, I don't want that right now. Perceived value is very low. So what does that mean about you that you don't view high value things as valuable as they are?
Oh man, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble consorting with people who misappropriate the value of something. Another way to say this real simply is you definitely should not hang out with people who ain't got shit to lose. When you hang out with people who got nothing to lose, man, you don't know what you're gonna find yourself in.
Dude, that's so true, man. Like, I got a group of boys, like, and they grew up. You know, I've had dudes who literally almost given their lives for me, but like they're in the same place that I left them, right? So I'll go to Erie and I'll always show them love. I'll never forget where I come from. But I've also explained to them to a point. It's like, hey, bro, like, I got a family, I got careers, I got a lot of things. There's a few things I can't be partaking in. I'm not going to knock you for it, but you have to understand there's so much more. And I'll use this opportunity to be like, bro, there's so much more to life than.
Because you got to remember something too, and you might not like this, but this is something that I don't have friends from before the age of 14. Every single person in my life is in my life, and even on a casual basis is in my life after. And it wasn't always that way. It was though after I got in the car with a guy and he had a gun and some weed, and I was like, what are you doing? But remember, everything you touch touches you.
Yes.
And I say this a few different ways, like I express this idea. You know, remember, you know, when you play in the mud, even if you're wearing white gloves, the mud doesn't get glovier, you know. It only rubs one way a lot of times.
Yeah, the glove gets muddy, but the mud don't get glovy. That's about to be a T-shirt.
And remember, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. And even if there is no fire, you have to explain why you smell like smoke. Mm. And these are just like different ways I've come to think about this idea that you got to accept the premise that a lot of people don't like. Most of your relationships are not going to last forever. If for no other reason than you are going to die, and they're going to die. And hopefully it ain't going to be at the same time, because that means something really bad has happened, usually. And then you got to accept another premise, that your time is finite. You don't have a lot of it. And what you do have, a third of it is spent sleeping, okay? And then, you know, as priorities come in, your children, your job, your relationship, it leaves a very small amount of time for how you decide to spend it with individuals who do not further your legacy, or activities that do not further your legacy. That's how we'll define that. And then you got to decide, what am I going to do with this time? You can use it any way you want, right? But now we're back to that cost value thing. Look, and I'll be the first to tell you, it ain't always got to be some high value return. Look, if everything's on point, you just want bullshit and watch Netflix or play the Xbox, do you, bro? That is way better than going down to the bar, getting smashed and driving. Like there's like three activities. There's like negative, neutral, you know, positive, generates a return. Existing in these two spaces are fine, especially if you got everything on lock. It's this last space you got to avoid all the time.
That's so
there
true.
Ain't never a good time to smoke crack. Like maybe
that's another T-shirt. Ain't never a good time to smoke crack. No, but like in all seriousness, like you said a third of your life is spent sleeping. Another third is spent working for someone else. That leaves you a third, in general, a third of your life to do what you want to do. Are you going to use a third of your life to push yourself, to stay where you're at, if you're good, or to destroy yourself? Mm-hmm. That's a third. And I had Dr. Rick on here, and he mentioned time is one of the only currencies you do not have a choice but to spend. Money, you can choose to spend it or not. Utilizing your network, you can choose to spend it or not. All these things, a lot of resources you choose to spend or not. Time, at the start of the day, it's withdrawn 24 hours and it's given. And whether you spend it here or don't spend it, it's being spent. And when he put it like that, that shit blew my mind. Now when I'm doing something, I'm like, am I wasting? Like today, I was at the gym. Found myself answering emails. I'm like, no, I'm here at the gym. Like I need to use this time or I'm going to lose this time. And I lost about 30 minutes making excuses, answering emails, making sure my Instagram post is up for the podcast. And it's like, nah, I'm here to work out. I need to use this time effectively.
You know what really just jacked me up on time, man? Fucking kid. I love my son, and because I love my son and I have a duty and a standard, it's made me ruthless with the time. Like ruthless, but it's also made me more delusional than ruthless. What I mean by that is like, well, it's not delusional, I guess. There are some times, last night was one of them. I got to go on 5 hours of sleep. I can't do that for too many days in a row, but you got to get stuff done. You got to find that time, but at the same time, what I find, you ever hear that old saying, you want something done, give it to a busy person, right? I think that same idea applies with finding what works in our time. If we can just make sure that we have a bunch of high-value things, a bunch of non-negotiables, then that makes anything that enters the orbit so important. And even if that's just the time you have by yourself to just look at the wall, it's a good use of time.
Well, I was looking at the stars the other day. I've been getting a lot of videos of like these new galaxies being looked at or discovered. Man. And dude, like to sit outside and look up and be like, we are not like in this grand scheme of things, we're a grain of salt in our galaxy. And then there's thousands and millions and billions of other galaxies. So we like, think about how important that should make you feel. It's like, I'm here. If we're looking at statistics, I should never be here.
Oh, for sure.
I should never be here, and I'm here. I get to be here. I've been given this opportunity. I didn't ask to be here, but by chance I am. What am I going to do with that? Dude, when I start having thoughts like that, whatever you want done, put it on my plate because I'm devouring it.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, because like it's all about perspective, right? Like you can look at the world and be like, I'm insignificant. Or you can look at the world and be like, dude, there's literally only one of me. There's only one of me. And what am I going to do with that? I guess that goes to show that it shows you a lot about how people approach things, right? When you start talking about the topic of death, you don't have a lot of time. How are you going to spend your time? People are like, oh, I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to do whatever I want. Yeah, cool. What is that? Drink and do drugs.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to spend your time?
Come on, bro.
Or are you going to go out, find a trade? I love talking to fighters because their mentality, right? And I always tell people, if you can apply a fighter's mentality into what you're doing, that's why I think people should read your book. If you can take your life, your upbringing, the lessons you've learned, how you've approached things, how you've approached fights, and apply it to your business, your office job, your relationships, that mentality, there's nothing that can stop you. But it requires work because you have to be able to digest what's being said and then understand it and apply it. If you can't apply anything, you're not learning anything.
Right. You're just
consuming information and then it's out. One thing I'd like to talk about is how you got here. What got you into boxing? Well, like all this stuff, you talk about your upbringing. It's easy to get lost. It's easy to just get consumed by your environment. You made a conscious decision to do something with yourself, and not only just something, but fighting out of all things. Like, what was that decision?
So, the first time I went to college, I shouldn't have been there, for lots of reasons. But I dropped out after 3 semesters. And really, it's more like, you can't fire me, I quit. I knew they were about to kick me out, so I dropped out.
You stuck it to them.
Yeah. And during this period of my life, I wasn't angry. Angry is the wrong word. I just had a chip on my shoulder. I was like, college is pointless. You don't need to do college. It's stupid. You can be successful without it. I mean, never mind the fact, man, I'm working at Starbucks, working at GameStop, little bullshit jobs like that. But I used to tell this to everybody, you don't need college. One of those people I would tell that to was my girlfriend's mother, who happened to be a professor of biology at the University of Pittsburgh.
College played a big role in that.
Right. Well, on top of that, that's her listening to me talk shit about her profession. Basically. To her credit, she was very polite and took it for a while. And finally, one day she said, what have you done with your life? Like, let's pretend you're right. College is pointless. What have you done with your life over the past 4 years other than show up at my house and eat my food? And then she threw me out. And I thought about that. I was embarrassed, but she was right. I hadn't done anything. I had not. I was 22. My biggest claim to fame is I played some high school football. That was the most unique thing about me, most interesting. So I said, what am I going to do? She's right. I never had a problem accepting reality. It's one of the things that happens when you grow up in a bad environment. You're not delusional. You never get a chance to entertain fantasy a lot of yourself. So I wasn't going back to college. I had zero faith in my academic ability. I did not graduate from high school. They just let me walk, but I failed the first time with not getting a high enough GPA. And then the second time when they were going to let me make up a class in summer school that I needed to finish, and I got caught plagiarizing an essay, so they said, nope. So there's that. Shouldn't have been at the school I was at. It's a very good school. They just liked that I played football and was part of an underrepresented class, being from the inner city projects, man. Go diversity, right? But
that's a whole conversation for another time.
So I had no faith in myself to go back to college. I looked at the Army. This was back when we invaded Iraq, like 2008. And I wanted to change my life, but I didn't want to do it so badly I was going to take a bullet over it. It's also right when YouTube came out, and YouTube, how I was using it, I was watching fight videos. I don't even remember why I was watching fight videos. I had never really it just looked cool, and I said, okay. You know what? That's something I could try. I could try this and see.
Out of all the things to try.
I got to work doing, as the old interesting man in the world commercials say, beefing up my obituary. And so I started fighting. And I did it the right way. I started as an amateur because I wanted to change my life, but I wasn't stupid. I knew a lot of guys who were like, I'm just a turn pro because I don't want to fight for prizes. And I'm like, right, but there's a limit here, and you understand the amateur system is to learn the game. We not just, fighting is the one sport where people come in with the most delusion. There's this motherfucker talking, he's talking my ear off. Anybody who listens to this and is part of the local fight scene, you know exactly who I'm talking about because he's probably talking your ear off too about this same point. Kid's about 5'7", maybe 190 pounds, and he's not in fight shape yet. So he'll probably be realistically, if he ever gets into fight shape, somewhere in the range of 170 to 180. He is convinced he will be a heavyweight fighter. And I'm like, I gave him 90 minutes that I can't get back explaining why he can't do this. And then I left. And I remember telling my wife this story, and she was like, why'd you talk to him that long? Like they're
remember that resource that you can't get back? Yeah, you spent that.
But yeah, that's how I ended up in fighting. I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could be somebody, man. And it ended up working out way better than I could have ever imagined. And the best part is it's not even the fighting. Like the fighting, that's just the cost of the club. Talk about these easy things to do and make it simple. Make sure the value exceeds the cost paid and all that. So we're going to go back to addiction real fast, and I swear it's relating to fighting. One of the things that is really appealing about the drinking and the drug culture is that you will never be alone. We kind of talked about that, but if we talk about like a mechanism of action, how this happens, well, there's like the whole drinking culture. You don't even have to like the people you drinking with. All you got to do is drink, and all of a sudden you're part of a club. They call them drinking buddies, man. People you get together with and drink with. You don't even like them. You don't have these motherfuckers. You don't even know their first name. Like,
you won't bring them around your family. You won't eat dinner with them, but you'll drink with them.
Oh, we're going somewhere, man, right? You ahead of me. It's great, right? You'll drink with them. They like you. They don't respect you. You like them. You don't respect them. You don't even know them to respect them. Because you won't do that. You won't bring them around their family. You won't even take the effort to get to know them. It's a real easy club. It's a low-cost entry. You attract a low caliber of person when you do that. And there's nothing to be in that club that forces you to do anything that makes yourself better. If anything, by definition of what we understand what alcohol does, it makes you worse to be part of that club. Same with the smoker club. A buddy of mine said to me a few years ago, no community like the smoker community. Oh, and I didn't know if he was talking about weed or cigarettes, to be fair. Either way, like, it's the same idea. To be part of the fight community, though, well, there's a different cost of entry. And that cost of entry, that cost does not exceed the value you get back for being a member of that community. Most people, when they get a friend request on Facebook, their greatest mutuals are going to be people they went to high school with. Mine or anybody from the fight community, usually, sometimes it's military. Because what fighting did, it did a few things, but I think the biggest one is that it forced me to become somebody to fit a standard that was accepted. And even if it's not some crazy world beater standard, you know, you become this front-facing entity even in your local neighborhood. You carry yourself a certain way. And the community doesn't want you to reflect poorly on them. You know, and you want to make sure you have standards.
It's a high standard, yeah.
Yeah. And you don't have to meet that by being this undefeated kind of fighter or anything like that, this world beater, but you can't be a degenerate. Nobody wants to associate with you if you're a degenerate. It's bad for you. It's bad for it's a bad look for the club.
If you don't take it serious by doing all this other stuff, it does shine a bad light on you.
So that's the best part about the boxing club, right? Is that you end up becoming you should become a better person. You should meet people. I'm convinced that one of the major downsides of this digital era is we don't have conversations like this in person anymore. What we do instead, we have text conversations and text discussions. And what we're doing is we're removing the thing that makes a conversation, which is the emotional component. The part you can't put into words. It's like when you read somebody's text. I just found out Gen Z is doing this annoying shit. Turns out using punctuation is offensive now. What about Gen Z? Because punctuation means you must be mad.
Oh, I know exactly. I use an exclamation point. I got a phone call. Hey, are we good? I'm like,
right?
What? No, I thought that was a good point you made.
So I gotta remember when I'm sending emails to people who are like under 30, and I'm like, God damn it, like, you know,
no all caps either. You scream and all if you do all caps.
So like, we don't have these combos because it's all in text now, And so we don't ever get a chance to, I won't say ever get a chance, but rarely we get a chance to like look and see what another person is about and treat them with the respect and learn how to work with them. And that teaches us how to be respectful too and how to work with people. And fighting forces all of that. You still can't fight digitally. Like you can listen to music digitally. You can even compose your music digitally. But if you want to fight, you got to do it in person. You got to train with other people, get you around people.
Yeah, and one thing that's very interesting, especially about the fight community, is the more you put in, the more it costs, the more value you get. Mm-hmm. It's not one of those things where the cost is going to exceed the value unless it's very rare, right? Like if it's just not for you, or if you're just not grasping the concept, the cost is going to start going above. But if it's something that fits for you, the more you put in, the more you're getting out in the sense of work, training, relationships, networking, right? Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people have mentioned you to me, and we've been talking about getting you on for a little bit now. And, so you've made the decision to come on, but now I'm hearing even more and more and more. And I forget who, it literally was the other day. Someone's like, you got to get Ed Latimore on. He's a local. I'm like, he's scheduled. Like I got him on. I got him on.
He's here.
So but it goes to show you how you've approached not only the fight world, but your life in general. Yeah. And that's a huge testament. And you've taken what is boxing? Like I said, I don't want to speak for you. What has boxing given you that now you take that for life? Because now you've written several pieces. You have a book coming out. What has boxing given you that doesn't necessarily mean for boxing? What is it giving you for life?
Oh man, that's easy. There's a few easy ones for that. The biggest thing I think of is boxing gave me confidence in myself to learn. I told you about how basically, I don't know what you call it. You failed high school because I didn't drop out, but I definitely didn't graduate. And I had no confidence in myself to learn things. And then I went through boxing. And I watched myself I was bad. There was just no way around that. I was bad, but I could hit guys hard, so every now and then I would not lose. I think my record, I had calculated this while I was writing. I was like, there was a point I was 13-5 as an amateur. All 13 wins by knockout, all 5 losses by points. In other words, if you could box just a little bit, it was going to be all right. You couldn't hurt me, but I couldn't hurt you, and you had more skill, and so you would win. And then I got better, and I got more skilled, and I beat guys I couldn't beat before, and got to the state title, got the national title, and got big amateur sponsorship, and great pro career, and get signed with Rock Nation. I do all these things, and I started terrible. I said, if I can do this with my body, I can do this, I must be able to do this with my mind, right? Remember, I didn't go back to college until I was 30. I didn't start again. And I started, and I went in a subject that was the one that had kicked my ass, math. Because to get a physics degree, you have to take so much math, you automatically end up with a minor. I took every math class you would take below a 400 class. So anybody who knows the math game, whether Calc 1, 2, 3, differential equations.
There's a Calc 3.
Oh yeah, Calc 3.
I took Calc 2 and I was like, done. Didn't take another math class. I thought I was at the top.
Yeah, Calc 3 is when you start applying everything you learned in Calc 1 and Calc 2 to three-dimensional spaces, which is where you need double and triple integrals, for example.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
So, but probability and stats, differential equations, ordinary differential equations. I didn't take partial differential equations. Linear algebra, numerical analysis, mathematical methods, all types of programming classes. It's a lot of math I've taken. I've taken all the math you can take that is applied mathematics. And this is from a person who failed all of those math classes in high school. The difference, I learned how to learn. Boxing gave me the confidence in myself to do that. It gave me a method, even though it seems completely different. This is what you got to do. Because boxing was the first time in my life, I didn't realize this until upon further reflection. It's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. I just happen to have maybe a slightly higher ceiling than the average person. So for most of my childhood, I did not think of myself as a stupid or challenged child. Largely because I was around going to school in the hood. And I started going to that school in Shinley. I was like, oh shit, I'm not ready for this. It's out of my depth. But instead of rising to the occasion, I said, this is just not for me. I can't do this. I don't have a mind for it. So I had a fixed mindset. I couldn't have that mentality with boxing. Otherwise, I would not have gotten good. So my mindset slowly shifted to a growth-focused mindset where I say, you know, now a saying I live by, given enough time and motivation, I can learn anything. I really believe that now. Didn't believe that before boxing. And it shows in everything I do.
And like you said, it was successful for you. And when was the last pro fight you had? It's been a while, right?
July 12th, 2025 at Highmark Stadium.
That was a pro fight.
It was a pro fight.
Okay, I didn't go. I didn't go, dude. I thought it was an exhibition.
No exhibitions here. This was work.
So
it was a real fight. Okay. That motherfucker hit me in my head, and I was like, That's where I was
gonna go to. Before that fight, when was your last fight?
December 16th, 2016.
So from 2016, you don't step in the ring. And then 2025 comes around. I'm sure Hutch approaches you. I don't know how that came out, but what was the deciding factor you've done it. You've made good for yourself. You've been writing books. I hear you play a mean game of chess. I find out everything, my guy. I should be a journalist. But what was the deciding factor to do it again?
Oh, man, we long forming, but I'm going to keep this one nice and succinct. 4 major factors for doing it again. Number 1, the book. I had enough experience with my first self-published book that I understood the media and press. And if I want to have this book do what I think it can do for me in my career, I need a bit of a backwind press. And there is no cooler story than a guy like me at my age fighting again. So there's that right there. But that alone wouldn't be enough if I go out there and I get fucking creamed.
We saw that happen to someone of high caliber a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
What was it? Tyson? Didn't Tyson? Yeah.
Well, he didn't get creamed.
He didn't get creamed, but...
So number 2. I think you had Matt Lashock on the show before.
Matt, good dude.
He invited me down a few years ago to teach one of his classes at his gym. And the way I approach things now, especially after having now this very strong math background and planning and quantitative analysis, I said, let me make sure everything I teach stands up in the boxing court of law. Well, surprise, there's no such thing because boxing is in the fucking Stone Age, man. I don't understand it. Well, maybe because I know how things should work. There's no standard way to teach the mechanics of punching because no one knows how to punch. Instead, they say things like, there's no way to punch. Like there's no one way to punch. No, there's a most efficient way to take a bunch of force vectors and send them in one direction. It's a simple biomechanics problem. They've solved this problem in every other sport. Could you imagine in baseball, somebody saying, there's no one way to swing the bat? And mean that like you could swing it in any position your feet want to be in. Like, no. There's a technique and we can refine it. I'm going somewhere with this. And then I started looking at different fights as I'm researching and trying to understand how these things work. My coach also messages me, Tom Yankello, and he's like, hey, can you come on a video I'm doing and explain to people why you don't want to twist your foot when you throw a hook? It's a big debate in the boxing community. Do you pivot your foot or do you hold it steady? He says he thinks it's a physics question, so he wants me to come on. And it's, in the purest sense of the word, it is a physics question, but it's technically a biomechanics question. So I start looking into this, understanding it, being able to explain this with words, studying a lot of anatomy, and I'm forming this picture, and then I start looking at fights, and I start picking the outcome of fights that people think are close. Like people thought the Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford fight would be close. I'm looking at the mechanics based on everything I looked at, and I said, what are you fucking guys smoking, man? Terrence Crawford is going to make him look like an amateur. I actually said that, and I took screenshots of it. I said, Terrence Crawford should make him look like an amateur. He cannot punch correctly. And it's really amazing that's how bad boxing is. The guys can get to Errol Spence's level and not have to have any understanding on how to actually generate power and move on their feet. Did the same thing, picking the winner of Ron Garcia versus Tank Davis. People thought Garcia would win. I said, no, Garcia should be able to stop him, short of a mistake. And Tank did. And Tank is mentally, other than that incident with the weird grease in the eye and knee, and a good mental fighter, very strong, solid guy. Everyone thought Usyk and Fury would be close, so did I, but it went exactly how I thought it would, down to the decision. And this is all now with this, looking at the sport through a biomechanical lens, not just as a fight with experience.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
So what I did then is that I said, okay, I know what I'm seeing. I know what to do. Can we train what I see and what can I refine it? And we can. And I don't want to argue with coaches. I don't want to argue with people who think they know better, who don't know a thing, who I'm not interested. I'm going to go prove it, and I'm going to prove it with my performance. So there's number two. I want to prove what I figured out, and I want to prove it real time.
So you gave a theory, and then you enacted said theory.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Number three. It turns out I've been fighting with a busted engine and an empty gas tank. I have hypothyroidism. I didn't realize that. It's not, but it doesn't manifest like normal hypothyroidism. My reverse T3, without going into the biochemistry, my reverse T3 is sky high chronically for no good reason. Reverse T3 is the opposite of T3. It's the metabolically inactive type. And because of that, my metabolism for most of my life has just kind of been, it's been like driving with the brake on. Now, fortunately, I'm highly active and eat well, so I never really had trouble with my weight. But there was a time where I was like, why do I weigh what I weigh instead of what I should weigh based on what I'm counting and calculating? Well, it turns out my body is like fighting me every step of the way. I could put on leothyronine, 25 micrograms a day, which is artificial T3, and I take 200 micrograms of selenium. And boy, I did 14 days, not even, I lost 15 pounds. All body fat. My body is cooking now. And that means I'll be able to get down to cruiserweight, where I should have been my whole career because I'm a small heavyweight. This fight that I just had, that was the biggest dude I'd fought, and it quickly reminded me of why I'm not fighting heavyweight again. I weighed in at 215 for that fight. He weighed in at 253. It's a 43-pound weight difference.
Damn.
He hit me, and I was like, I have to get him out, because I don't want to do this too long. I mean,
the cost is very steep now.
So yeah, and then the other thing too is that I get my blood work checked religiously, and my CO2 was creeping up. Turns out, it creeped up. It looked like I had COPD. That's how high I got. And I'm like, this is crazy. I can run a mile in 7 minutes. I'm in good shape. Nah, man, my asthma was flaring up. Got put on a daily inhaler, which I actually did have as an amateur, but for whatever reason I stopped using it. But getting those two things fixed, man, I'm like, I'm young again. It's great.
So is this something you're gonna dabble in again?
Oh, for sure. I put too much time and energy into getting this back, and then with this system and what I can see and what I explain it to people, because to me that's the sign that you really understand something when you can explain it to another person. That whole mentality got me through my degree. One of the things I did as a senior at Duquesne is I tutored the high schoolers in physics and calculus. I actually said to a girl one time, I said, look, don't worry, man. I failed this class 3 times before I got it. You're in good hands. And she looked at me like, what? Did my parents make a mistake? I'm like, no, it's all good.
I got it now.
I know all the ways you're going to make an error. Just follow me. But what that taught me is something very valuable. If you can't explain it simply and confidently in non-jingoistic, jargonistic language, you probably don't have a good enough grasp on it. I have a good enough grasp on it, and it's repeatable, and it shows in everything I do and how I feel and how I move. And it's showing in the sparring and everything. So what I want to do is I want to run with this and see how far I can go. Because I got interested when I was looking at comparable titles for my book. Then when you put the proposal together to sell your book, there's a comparable title section. The only comparable titles I could find was David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. So I went and really dove and understood why David Goggins' book was so successful. And what I could only realize, aside from his appearances on Joe Rogan, he was still running, and running plays a big part in the book. So if I have this book about boxing, I got to go do a few more fights. In a perfect world, here's what I hope happens. I hope that we got 1, maybe 2 more fights before someone goes, look at this 41-year-old motherfucker with this great record. Let's give him $150,000, but we know he's going to lose the fight. This is what they do. The A side, B side, they know what they're doing. Except they don't know what they're doing, which is what I'm hoping because of what I figured out. So mark this conversation. It might be nothing. You might go play this back one day when I get one of the belts. They'll have me come in for the fight because I got this great record. It's marketable against whoever's up and coming because that's a big consideration. And I go and pull off an upset. And I know this is kind of how it works because when I lost my fight against my fight against Trey Lippe Morrison, I started getting calls for fights for like $20,000 and $30,000 against guys I knew I couldn't beat. Like fighters say I can beat anybody. Nah, I ain't fucking stupid.
Realistic is something you've always had.
Yeah. I know, you're not calling me, offering me $30,000 unsigned because y'all think I'm gonna win this fight. I ain't fucking stupid, man. Look, and because I didn't do that, and it would have been great to take that money at that time because it was hurting. Because I didn't do that, now I have this record now with this understanding in this position to really capitalize on it, ideally. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh, dude, I'm excited. Well, I have a question. So, is it more efficient to rotate your foot or not?
No, no.
Because I got a lot of fighters tuning into this, and they're probably like, "Okay, so what is it?"
Oh man!
In your experience and your understanding, do you rotate or not?
You don't rotate your foot. You need to.
Give it to us. Give it to us.
Okay, without me demonstrating and moving, the idea is force causes things to move, and friction is a force. We just don't think of it that way because it causes things to, or we won't say move anymore. We'll say force causes things to change their acceleration. There's a much that's more general. That means increase or decrease. We just don't think of friction as a force because it's a decreasing force. It slows you down. And you need friction, though, because of Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you're going to push forward, it's just the same way you think about it. When you walk, where does your foot go? Your foot kicks back and you go forward. Equal and opposite direction. And that's why if your feet don't have enough, your shoes don't have enough traction, you slip and you don't go anywhere because there's not enough friction to move you. What's all this have to do with twisting your foot? When you twist your foot, if you can twist your foot, there's not enough friction for you to drive your hip forward.
Or you're losing force that you could be using
to drive your foot. Either
way. That makes sense.
Right? That's without talking about the technique of rotating in the core or anything like that. But you would never want, and this is a really great kind of place to introduce another fascinating fact. Guys will tell you, there's two incredible myths, because boxing is full of people who have not studied a single bit of anything outside of boxing. Forget physics. You don't have to study physics. Go study biology, study chemistry, study anatomy, anything to give you another paradigm to help you realize that what we have here is not complete and we are paying the price for it. Every other sport is so much more developed and researched. But 2 myths. You can't increase punching power. You can't improve your chin. And I find those myths interesting because if you look statistically, and I only realized this after I realized kind of the verification of this, but if you look statistically, your fighters with the highest knockout percentages also have the least times of being knocked down. And if you watch the fight, they don't measure this, but if they're like rattled or stunned. So what's going on here? Well, the general idea, you can't separate offense and defense. But generally speaking, we'll say, or rather more technically, not generally, more technically speaking, you generate power by driving through the ground. Part of that mechanism we were just talking about with friction is you push in one direction, or you get a force pushing against you in the other direction, and you use that to rotate your hips and generate more power. Well, it works the other way too. If you take a punch and you are grounded, the force that you eat that punch in goes through your body and down into the ground. It's like an electric ground. Granted, versus if you were like on the ball of your foot, well, now you've got a smaller place for that energy to try and connect to the ground, a much bigger kind of depository, and that means some of it's going to escape and disrupt you. And here's a place where it usually escapes from here to here. And then the next place, hips, and then down to knees. Now, granted, part of this is neurological, but that's why one of the reasons why your legs kind of go to jelly when you take a good hit. But if you can take a good hit, you'll notice that's when I knew I had it, because I took a good hit in sparring and I just felt the hit. It was just like getting hit in the head. I didn't feel my legs wobble. A good coach can look and see that, what's going on. Now, and this is all stuff like look, I'm not some boxing genius. I'm just a guy who took knowledge from other disciplines and applied them where they should be applied. And maybe I'll be completely wrong. I don't think I'll be, but certainly this is recorded, so we come back and eat. You either be replaying this one day as I'm breaking it down and talking about the next.
You're gonna be on ESPN, literally talking about this, and I'm gonna be like, "Oh, damn, I've heard that before."
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me, and it's fascinating because it's one of those areas where like clearly someone has figured it out, but I don't think many people have. I think what we see here's my conspiracy theory. And it's not really a conspiracy theory, it's just what I think, I guess. Because it's a fight, someone has to win. Or rather, most times someone has to win. Draws are rare. And so you end up with kind of the best to worst loser. Or the best person of two people who don't know what they're doing winning. Because I've looked over, going back to the Errol Spence Terrence Crawford comparison. I've looked over Errol Spence's fights just because I'm like, people go, "Oh, it was the car crash," and I'm like, nah, man. I'm analyzing. I'm like, this motherfucker can't, he doesn't know what he's doing with the rotation. But if you match and move a guy well, what you can do, you get to the top and you realize all you have are a bunch of people who maybe do some things slightly better. But overall are still lacking a base foundation. But when you get a guy with a great foundation, you know what you end up with? You end up with a guy like Canelo Alvarez. You know, but a guy like Terrence Crawford. You know, but a guy like Marvin Hagler. I'm just trying to think about the guys that I looked at who have really solid mechanics and get it. Gervonta Davis is a really great example. Who else? I actually don't. You know, I like Naoya anyway. I think. Naoya anyway has such good mechanics. He can actually be technically not sound because Naoya has been dropped like 2 or 3 times. His technique is kind of open and bad, but he recovers and comes back every time and wins because his mechanics are amazing and it's learnable. You just have to know what you're doing.
It goes to show you about like talent, right? Like we see this with like singers and creatives. Someone has a talent, and then someone who knows how this talent works in and out will take them under their wing and develop that talent into a skill. It's like, I guess that's what you're kind of saying about boxing. Is that you have people who they're doing something and it's sound as well, but they may not understand what they're doing completely. And if you can understand what you're doing completely, that's when you can start cleaning that up and touching it up.
Yeah, if you understand that, you can do some cool things with it. But who knows, man? I might end up disappearing as a crazy cuck about this stuff, man. Like crazy kook, because I've had talks with people. I just know that what I'm talking about goes over the heads of most people who need to hear it most.
And all we can do is with people like that is tell them what we know, and if you apply it, great. Yeah. If you don't, great. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and
it's just some extra, another tool to the tool belt. Man, we've talked about a lot of awesome things. One thing I like to do as we end it, you've had a lot of great points, and to someone listening, if you can just give them, once the podcast is over, they got to their destination, or they're watching it on their TV, they're listening to it, whatever, the podcast is over. What's one message, if you could boil it down, that you would hope that these listeners can take from our conversation today?
The difficulty of something is irrelevant if it's vital to your success. I really, if we can just sum up everything we were talking about, from how relationships work, to managing your time, to choosing difficult things, to building confidence in yourself when you face something difficult, and using it to move past that difficulty, even up to what it takes to be sober. Difficulties are relevant. You just got to do it.
And where can people find your book once it becomes available? You said it's supposed to drop here soon.
Man, you can get the book anywhere. I had somebody send me a pre-order receipt from Target. Didn't even know you could buy books from Target, man.
Yeah, Target's got a good book selection now.
But yeah, you can buy, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. I read the audio book myself, man, so I know that's...
Who does the voice?
Me. I read the audio book.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And let me tell you something.
I was going to say, if you need someone, I got a guy.
Let me tell you something. They pay the standard rate, unless you're a celebrity, is $5,000 to read. And they're like, oh, you get paid to read your own book. I thought that too. I thought how exciting. The next book, if it is not a memoir, look, I might let somebody else do it. You know why? Because you don't think about this, but when's the last time you read a full 70,000 words out loud in a row?
So, like, do you break it up? Like, do you break it up, and or do you have to just read through?
It was 3 days.
That's wild.
And 3 days, and it was an hour lunch break on each day. And it's not like it was a full day. It was like, I think I had to be at the studio at 9. It was like 9 to 5 we record. So it took about 20, 23, 22 hours to do. Because we had like power outage too, which was crazy. But let me tell you something I figured out. There are 2 things. It's actually, in all honesty, it's not that bad, but it definitely is not some light work. Like,
dude, think about a work day. Now you're sitting here and reading words on a page.
You're just reading. And I went without my glasses. I thought we were going to be good. I made so many mistakes the first day because I couldn't see, making a mistake between like had and bad. And I'm like, because I can't see that it's an H or a B, because I need my glasses. Well, now lately, you know, I need them for a lot of things, and it's just, especially anything with a screen. But well, that's what I was reading off of. I was reading off an iPad. Now my left eye is still good. So once I figured out what was causing me the problems, I just closed my left eye, but it still wasn't the same.
So you're like this for 10 hours.
Yeah, and we were actually behind after the first day because of how far behind, like, the mistakes I was making with my glasses. But once I brought my glasses the next 2 days, we ended up ahead, and that was even with the power outage.
That's interesting. People never really realize that, like, what it takes to. I didn't even think about what it takes to put a book out. You got to read your own book now. You got to read your own book now.
They were like, you could, like, we can bring somebody in. I'm like, yo, it's a memoir. No, 2, it's $5,000. I already wrote the motherfucker. All I got to do is read it. You just going to pay me for that? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not giving that up. On top of that, they paid for lunch all 3 days.
That's a win.
Yeah.
That's a win. Where can people follow you online if they want to learn more about you or you know, follow your fight journey now that it's
Fortunately, I'm Ed Latimore everywhere on the internet. So I'm Ed Latimore on Instagram, or Ed Latimore on Twitter, Ed Latimore on Facebook, Ed Latimore on LinkedIn, Ed Latimore on YouTube, and my website is edlatimore.com.
Simple. We can do that. Well, bro, I appreciate you for jumping on the Relentless Project, sharing a little bit about your story, a lot of it about your story, your book. I implore you guys, go follow his page. Look up the book. It should be dropped by the time this episode airs, so no excuses. Go get the book. And follow us online, Relentless PRJCT, everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube, so you can hear more cool stories from cool people like this, bro. I appreciate you for jumping on. This is the One with Ed Latimore, and we're out. Later.